All right, everybody. Welcome back to a very sad and special edition of the Facts Over Feelings podcast. We're at episode somewhere in the 50s. I forgot, actually. I think it's 55,
Yeah, it's
Ryan, if I'm
55.
correct. 55. Okay.
Mhm.
We are once again joined by the ugly face of Jack Eden, but he has a great shirt on today. I love the shirt, Jack. Welcome back. We like to bring Jack on to talk a lot of NBA. That's kind of his expertise. Also, some college basketball and NBA draft as well today.
Mm.
Ryan, I will hand it off to you though. To actually wait before I hand it off to you to get started, Jack, I want you to join in on a round of applause with me for our Phoenix Suns. It was a really sad way to end a
Mm.
dream season. Jack, I saw the post on Instagram. You couldn't have explained it better yourself. What a wild ride it was. We'll talk a lot about that today, Ryan, but go ahead and get us started.
Yeah, so look, this is a good podcast for me because this is the first podcast, all summer really back going towards spring where Trevor can't really brag about his Suns. They finally hit the end of their road. They were up 2-0 in the NBA Finals. They were 2 games away from winning the title, winning the championship, and then it just slipped away through their fingers, and Giannis Antetokounmpo stole it out of Chris Paul's hands. So I mean, we can start off by talking about this NBA Finals and this series that ended in 6 games. And I was going to start off by talking about it, but I kind of want to see what Jack thinks about these. Specifically these last few games, these last 2 games, last 3 games, really. What happened to Phoenix? Why did they slip at the end here?
Yeah, well, thanks again for having me on. I love coming on the podcast, talking about my Suns, talking basketball. But I think the fact that this comes down to is what the Suns did fantastic all season long, they failed to do in this series. There wasn't a better team in clutch time. Chris Paul, Mr. Clutch. Um, 3 of those games were tight games. 3 of those games could have gone either way.
Mm.
But the fact of the matter is, when it came down to it, the Bucks made more plays down the stretch than the Phoenix Suns did. Um, you look back, Game 4, uh, they have that bucket. That I think they were down to 99-97 or something like that. They go up to the lob from Booker to Ayton. Great play by Giannis, blocks it.
Mm-hmm.
That Suns get another chance.
Mm.
Chris Paul turns the ball over. That didn't happen all season. Game 5, what killed us? Turnover down the stretch from Booker and an offensive rebound on a free throw. 2 things that killed the Suns the entire series were turnovers and offensive rebounds. And you know what? Milwaukee made both those plays down the stretch in Game 5, and Phoenix made neither of them. And then the same thing in Game 6. It was always a 4 to 6 point game, and Phoenix just couldn't make enough plays to cut that gap and tie it or take the lead down the stretch. So basically what they did well all season, what they were the best team at all season, was clutch minutes and finishing games. Um, but the fact of the matter is the Bucks were better than the Suns in that time in this series. And I also want to say as well that if you look at the Bucks big three and the Suns big three, the Bucks big three played better, which
Mm.
is to be expected. They've been around longer. They've been together longer. But definitely as a Suns fan, I felt a lot of optimism and hope, especially seeing how those 3 had played throughout the entire postseason. It gave me hope that we could give them a run, and a couple things didn't go our way, and that ultimately decided this series.
Trevor?
I couldn't agree more with that analysis. Very well done, Jack. He's exactly right. And I'll reword it a little bit. When the Bucks and Suns needed greatness, the Suns got good to mediocre, and the Bucks got greatness. Right. All the highlight plays we're going to remember from this series were all Bucks plays.
Mm.
The Giannis block, the Giannis lob, the big Middleton jumper in Game 6 to ice the game. The Bucks made great plays down the stretch, and the Suns didn't. And that was the story of the last 3 games of the series. Because you look back to the first 3 games, they were all double-digit wins, 2 by my Suns, 1 by the Bucks. It was games 4, 5, and 6 when, 4 minutes left in the game, we're basically tied in every single one of those last 3 games. And Jack's right. The Bucks made a couple plays. We made a couple mistakes. And they win a title, and we don't. And again, Jack was right on this point. The Bucks have played together. At least Giannis and Middleton have played together for 8 years now. and they have been through the ringer. They were on a 15-win NBA team. You know, we talk about how Devin Booker was a part of all those 20-win Suns teams. I don't think he was ever a part of a 15-win team, you know? So Giannis and Middleton have been through the ringer. A lot of people forget that. And I was actually just thinking about this the other day in the shower, as weird as that might sound. The 2019 Bucks and the 2021 Phoenix Suns are so similar in many ways, right? The 2019 Bucks kind of pop onto the scene. You know, they haven't had a deep playoff run in a while. They go up 2-0 in the Eastern Conference Finals against an experienced veteran-led Toronto Raptors team. And what happens? The Bucks lose 4 straight. Giannis kind of melts a little bit. Kawhi rises to the occasion. And those last 3 or 4 games down the stretch that Toronto won in a row were all very close games where Toronto made plays at the end and Milwaukee didn't. And Toronto goes to the NBA Finals in a 6-game series and they end up winning a title. This time around, my 2021 Phoenix Suns are a lot like the 2019 Bucks, you know, a little bit inexperienced. They get off to a hot start because they play in front of the home crowd. They win 2 games at home relatively easily. The Bucks don't panic. You heard Mike Budenholzer after game 2. He was clapping it up. He was happy after that game 2 loss. He thought the Bucks were heading in the right direction. And I was laughing a little bit. I was like, your team just lost 2 games by double digits. And Budenholzer's like, we're going home. We're going to win both at home. And then it's anyone's series. And he was exactly right. That team never panicked. They've been together for a very long time, particularly Giannis and Middleton. They've had their trials and tribulations, right? They've had those heartbreaking losses. And their experience came out in the finals. You know, they made all the little plays. They won the 50-50 balls. They got the extra possessions. And they made great plays at the end, you know, blocks, shots, whatever it was. So for me, this is an unbelievable learning experience for my Phoenix Suns. DeAndre Ayton said it. Now we know what it takes to win a title. You know, Devin Booker's going to get back to work. Chris Paul's going to get back to work. And he's not going to the Lakers. Shut up, ESPN. It ain't happening. And I want to end it with this. I'm just so incredibly proud of my Phoenix Suns. You know, Ryan said we're not going to be able to brag about them on this podcast. I'm going to brag about them. They had a once in a lifetime for me type of year where they went to the NBA Finals for the first time in our lifetime. They were 2 wins away from a title, and it's a heartbreaking way to end, but I see nothing but greatness in the future for this team, and I'm incredibly proud of the way they played all season long.
Yeah, look, I mean, I wanted you two to start off because, you know, you're both Suns fans. And I agree, though. I mean, look, the Suns had a great season. Before I get into these NBA Finals, the Suns had a great season. I've said it to both of these guys, like, for the last few weeks. Like, seriously, like, you have to be really proud of your team. I mean, no one expected the Suns to go to the finals. No one expected either of these teams to go to the finals. But, like, the Suns had such a Cinderella-style run. I mean, not only to get the 2 seed in the West, which surprised everybody, people still doubted them. They were first-round exits, according to a lot of people, right? Everyone thought the Lakers were going to win.
According to Ryan, right?
According to me. I mean, look, most people should take LeBron James over inexperienced Suns teams, and the Suns just walked right over him. I mean, it was a great run. So, I mean, like, I joke, but seriously, like, they had a great postseason, and it was probably a really good experience for all the Suns fans and a great learning experience for a lot of the young guys on the team. Like, I mean, Booker put up, I don't want to get this wrong, but didn't he have the most points out of any player in their first postseason run? I want to say, I believe.
Of all time.
Yeah.
Of all time.
So, I mean, like, what a good experience for him, you know, for all the young guys, you know, DeAndre Ayton going to get paid because of this postseason. Cam Johnson had a great postseason, I feel like, from watching him. And, you know, a lot of these guys had a really good experience. So I think that was good for them. But about these finals specifically, I mean, look, these guys both said it, but I'm going to say it again. And I agree with what they said. The Bucks just made the plays down the stretch. I mean, like, Trevor's right. You're going to remember all these Bucks plays when you're looking back on these finals, the Giannis block, you know, the Jrue Holiday alley-oop to Giannis, you know, Chris Middleton hitting that jumper to go up by 6 with like a minute to go or something like that in game 6, as Trevor said as well. Like, these are all the plays that the Bucks made. And I can't remember like a big Suns play inside like a minute and a half in the last 3 games. You know,
I can remember a couple.
but-
Just
I mean,
Chris
turnovers.
Paul loses the ball,
Yeah.
Devin Booker loses the ball. I remember those ones.
The good ones, you know, there just weren't many.
Exactly.
You know? So it was just one of those things that, you know, one team managed to make the clutch plays and the other didn't. I mean, like, you know, I don't know. It just was what it was. And I also want to say, I mean, Giannis was just superhuman. That's also something that was obviously a factor. And it was something the Suns were able to overcome in the first 2 games, right? I think he dropped over 40. I want to say in game 2, right?
He did.
But the Suns still won pretty handily. You know, but he dropped 50 in game 6. And not only that, but he shot 90% from the line. Like, I mean, when a guy who's shooting under like around 50% in the finals or in the playoffs, I mean, shoots 90% from the line all of a sudden on 19 free throws. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So, I mean, hats off to Giannis specifically because he was doing everything. And I wanted to say that, like, not only in game 6, but in all the playoff games and especially all the finals games, like Giannis was laying it all out there on every single play. And a lot of times you see superstars, LeBron being the poster child for this, like taking plays off, even in like big games, in the first, second, or third quarters. But Giannis is going hard every single possession, both on offense and defense. And it was just really cool to see. He was just a lot of fun to watch in these finals. And the only other thing I want to note is that the Suns just got out rebounded. I don't know. I mean, from what I saw, especially in games 4 and 6.
Oh no, they definitely got out rebounded.
Yeah, and that was a big thing.
I
mean, it was. They got out rebounded by 8 in game 4 and in I think 16 in game 6. Which, wow, like to be in that game losing by 7 and getting out rebounded by 16. Like, I don't have the second chance points in front of me, but I could imagine it's quite a big gap, not only in game 6, but in a lot of the other games as well. So, like, if there's one like statistical critique, it's definitely the rebounding and second chance points for the Suns. But, it was a great finals from a guy who doesn't have any dog in this race. It was a lot of fun to watch. I mean, I like 2 small market teams going at it, or smaller market teams going at it, instead of all these New York and LA and Brooklyn teams. It's a nice change of pace. So, it was a great finals, and, I guess the best superstar won, I suppose.
I want to add on another thing about this, and Jack kind of touched on it. The Suns didn't play the way they played all season long in terms of team ball on the offensive end. I felt like this happened in the Clippers series a little bit, but it also happened a lot in the Milwaukee series. I just felt like we played a lot more ISO ball, and I don't feel like we did play a lot more ISO ball. We only averaged 20 assists per game as a team in this series, where I believe we averaged closer to 28 to 30 in the regular season as team assists per game. I felt like Devin Booker in games 4 and 5, where he was spectacular, just had too much of a weight on his shoulders. He took way too many shots. He didn't take way too many shots, but he had to take all those shots just because we weren't playing team ball. We weren't generating offense for others. We were, running ISO ball for Booker, and he was great in those couple games, but you saw in game 6, the shots weren't falling. So Jack was right. The Suns lost. I shouldn't say lost, but the Suns didn't play their style in this series like they have this entire season and postseason. The assist numbers were down. And I think that has partially to do with Chris Paul. Chris Paul didn't look 100% right to me. I'm not going to say he was injured because
you're right.
I don't know if he is or not. I'm not going to speculate. But he didn't look like that commanding floor general that we had seen all season long. And credit Jrue Holiday, his defense was fantastic in that series as well. But yeah, it started with Chris. I felt like his presence wasn't quite as felt. He had a good game 6, but you could just tell he wasn't great throughout the rest of the series. And yeah, I'll say it again. Our assist numbers were down and Devin Booker's individual shots were up. And that's kind of like the 2018 Phoenix Suns, where Devin Booker has to do everything. And that's not what I wanted to see in this series. But
Jack? I don't know if you have anything to add, but
yeah, I mean,
if not,
just to add on, you could say Chris Paul was injured. I think you got to give more credit to Jrue Holiday and his defense versus whatever was going on with Chris's hand and wrist or whatever it was. I think the biggest thing to note is in game 4 and 5, Devin Booker scores 40 points. Chris Paul gets shut down. And then in game 6, Chris Paul goes off, but you know why? It's because Budenholzer put Jrue Holiday on Devin Booker for the majority of that game instead of PJ Tucker. So again, just showing you how great Jrue Holiday is on the defensive end. And I forget who said it, someone on ESPN, but you can look at the Jrue Holiday games, 4 of 20 offensively. In game 6, he wasn't scoring the ball a ton, but his presence was felt on the defensive end. And I really think, Giannis obviously won MVP. Middleton was great. Their role players played great. But I think, honestly, in my opinion, the biggest reason that they won this series is because of Jrue Holiday and his defense. Not Giannis going for 50. Like you saw in the regular season, Giannis scored 40 points on us and we won both those games. You saw in game 2, Giannis scores 40 and we won. I have to give the most credit on this Bucks team to Drew Holiday and his ability to slow down Chris Paul and Devin Booker and take the Suns out of what they wanted to do. But quickly, just going back to Trevor's point, how the Suns weren't able to get into their team ball offense. I think a big part of that was Drew Holiday shutting down Chris Paul and not letting him facilitate. And I think for that reason, that's where you saw all the Devin Booker shots.
No, I agree with you 100%. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ryan.
No. If you want to say something real quick.
Yeah, I was gonna say something real quick. Also, another thing that Drew Holiday did, and I was kind of screaming at the Suns later in the series to do this. You know, Drew Holiday's picking up 94 feet, and and I can't tell you how many times we were half a second away from being at an 8-second violation. So Drew Holiday is picking us up 94 feet, and we're taking 8 to 10 seconds just to get across half court and like not even get into our offense, but get across half court. Then we take another 3 to 4 seconds to get into our offense. And at that point, you only have 8 or 10 seconds left on the shot clock. And you have to make 1 or 2 passes and hope Devin Booker can bail you out with the jump shot. I just felt like we lost our pace in this series. And it's all credit to Drew Holiday, but we lost our pace and we just lost our – I shouldn't say lost. We lost our pace, but we didn't match their intensity on the ball. Their on-ball pressure, particularly after game 2, was just magnificent. And I felt like that was disrupting our offense, and we weren't doing the same thing to them. I didn't feel like our on-ball pressure was there, and I felt like they could get whatever they wanted on the offensive end, particularly Giannis. I mean, he's a matchup nightmare, but I felt like Middleton was getting whatever he wanted, and Holiday, you know, he missed a lot of shots, but he got a lot of good looks, and their role players got involved. So I just felt like their ability to disrupt us wasn't matched by us on them. That makes sense.
No, yeah, 100%. And I think it's good that Jack shouted out Drew Holiday because, I mean, he really did play fantastically. I watched a video, a compilation of like all the big like blocks and steals Holiday had in this postseason. And just watching his defense, just watching how quick his hands are, even when players are driving to the basket, like he's still looking to strip the ball. You know, he's not even looking to go for the shot necessarily. He's just looking to strip the ball, and it works a lot of the time. I mean, and it was just, it was just really cool to see. Because Jack's right. You know, a lot of people are going to look at like, 4 for 20, or like, why is he so bad shooting, away from home? That's a part of it, sure. But like his role on this team isn't necessarily to be like some uber efficient, like high-powered offensive player. Like that's not what he's supposed to be doing. That's not his primary role, at least, right? Like it's a bonus if that happens, which I think game 5 that I think it was game 5, right? Where he played really, really well on the offensive end. Yeah. I mean, like that's, it's a bonus, but they don't need that. They need his defense. Jack's right. So I'm glad he pointed that out because it leads to my other point that, I talked about Trevor when I was first predicting this series, and Trevor remembers when I said like, the Suns guard play, if it's inconsistent, like that would bring cause for concern for me. And that's kind of what happened, right? Like, it's not that they played bad. It's like, I mean, Drew Holiday whether it was Drew Holiday impacting them or they just weren't making their shots. Like they were inconsistent. Like Chris Paul was off one game, then Booker was on, Booker was off, and as Jack pointed out, Paul was good in game 6, sure. But Booker, he wasn't good on the offensive end. Like he just wasn't making his shots. I mean, he didn't make a 3 on 7 attempts. And if you're the Suns, you just can't have that really from your best player. Even if Drew Holiday's just guarding him, you got to find some way to get him open, find some way to, maybe just have him not shoot, as much when Drew Holiday's on him and you're just having a cold night. So I don't know, but that was something that I was concerned about going into the series. And it's kind of, I guess, at least partially, what led to them losing because, Paul definitely wasn't playing great, in the majority of this series, especially in the middle part of the series. And then Booker, struggled in game 6. So, I mean, that's what happened.
100%. And before we move on, again, I'll relay the sentiment and then hand it off to Jack for any closing thoughts on this portion. Big picture, the Phoenix Suns aren't going anywhere except up. I mean, they're going to be relevant for years now, and that's exciting. Even as heartbreaking as this series was to lose those 4 straight games, looking at a big picture, the Suns team, I fully believe is going to win a ring one day. They have the core to do it. They have the star power. I'm so glad that people are finally realizing how good Devin Booker is, because Jack knows, Suns fans know how good Devin Booker is. We've watched him play for 5 years. We've watched this guy score 70 points in a game. We watched this guy carry us to an 8-0 record in the bubble and drop 35 a game in the bubble. And finally, the national stage got to see how good Devin Booker was. Hopefully he doesn't get snubbed for all-star games going forward. It's happened twice, but again, big picture, the Phoenix Suns were incredible this entire year. They're not going anywhere. Chris Paul is not going anywhere. And go look at Jay Crowder's Instagram post. That got me fired up for next season. And let's get back to work, boys. We got work to do.
Yeah,
Any
I mean,
final thoughts? Yeah.
I echo the same thing. I love what we did this postseason. I thought our young guys really emerged. The guys like DeAndre Ayton, I think his play elevated extremely during the postseason. Guys like Cameron Payne, Torrey Craig, Cam Johnson, I thought all those guys played super well. It's tough, like, losing this series. Obviously, we didn't play well as a team to end this season. Otherwise, it would have ended a little bit better. So, but I think it's important not to forget the steps that we went through to get here. And that was off the backs of guys like Cameron Payne starting 2 games when Chris Paul was out and balling even whatever his role was, starting or off the bench. Cameron Johnson coming in and shooting nearly 50% once his wrist finally healed. DeAndre Ayton turned into a 2020 guy for the first 3 series of this postseason. Mikal Bridges guarding the best player on the other team every night, and his offense wasn't always there, but you saw the spurts of what he could do. And he's much more than just a 3-and-D guy. He's a great mid-range player. He's a great slasher. Jay Crowder is a solid veteran to have on your team. Chris Paul is a great leader. I just think it's going to be interesting to see what we do this postseason or this offseason, trying to negotiate contracts and see which guys we bring back and which guys we don't. Ultimately, I don't believe everyone from this team comes back. I think that's impossible to do. But I think, like Trevor said, our core is intact. Our core of Booker, Bridges, Ayton. We have Crowder under contract. If Paul comes back, all 5 starters are returning. So we'll see what James Jones does with the bench. See if Cameron Payne comes back. We'll see if Torrey Craig comes back. But there were a ton of guys that played great minutes this postseason who really, I think, elevated their game. And that's the reason that this young, inexperienced Suns team was able to make the finals. So if everyone comes back, I feel confident about what we could do in the coming years. If not everyone comes back, at least we have the core in place. So I'm excited to go from here.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are right. I don't have anything to add. I mean, you guys are going to be a good team for years to come, a young core. Even if Chris Paul weren't to come back, I mean, you'd still be a playoff team, contending team, especially with, young guys.
Hello?
Like
Reggie Jackson. How does the Suns jersey look, my friend? Oh, that's only if Chris Paul comes back. Doesn't come back, you're right.
Reggie Jackson, he did have quite the postseason. He is quite the player. You never know. I guess, unless you guys have anything else to talk about in regards to the Suns, I mean, I don't have anything else to add. We can kind of segue into the NBA offseason. And, there's 2 steps to this offseason. It's going to be a great offseason, by the way. And the first one is the NBA draft, which is coming up this Thursday, 4 days from now.
I know Ryan's excited.
Hey, look, I'm excited because this is the most exciting part of my offseason, all right? No stars come to Cleveland in free agency. We never make the playoffs anymore. So the draft's my, the most enjoyable moment of my season. So I am looking forward to Thursday night. And, I guess you guys aren't for the first time in a long time, which I guess, is definitely a good thing. For years, I didn't care about the draft. And, it's good not to care about the draft, really. But it's still very important, even for teams like the Suns and the Bucks, because, this is how you keep your team improving over many years. So I wanted to start off by talking about something that, might not seem really like an interesting topic of discussion for the 2 of you or even for a lot of people, but it is for me because I don't think Cade Cunningham is the best player in this draft class. I was wondering if the 2 of you think he is. I don't know if
yes.
Jack, you wanted to let me know. You think he is? You think he is? Why do you think he is? Why do you think Cade's the best player in this draft?
Because he's a 6'8" guard. He's a 6'8" point guard.
Yeah.
Who can shoot, who can pass, who can rebound. Defense, I don't necessarily know if that's there. I feel like you're gonna rebut with a lot of things I'm saying, but basically, from everything that I watched of him during this season, his IQ is off the charts. He's a guy who knows how to make plays when it counts. And a lot of the games that I watched during the regular season, Yeah, he goes into halftime with 6 points and 3 or 4 assists. But basically, his game is, I guess, in a sense, similar to Chris Paul's. Don't want to compare him to Chris Paul or anything like that. But early on, he's trying to get his teammates involved. He's feeling out the game. He's not necessarily super aggressive. Um, but coming down the stretch in a tight game, there were multiple games I watched this season, especially when they got hot towards the end of the regular season and heading into March, that he took over games in the second half. And there was no one who could guard him, to be honest, on that floor. So for that reason, I think he has all the athletic abilities. He's got to grow a little bit more. He's still a 19-year-old kid at the end of the day. But
Mhm.
I think he honestly has far and away the most upside in this draft.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, Ryan. I'm gonna go because I know you are gonna rebut a lot.
that's fair.
I'm in agreement here with Jack. I think Cade Cunningham is the best prospect. He has the highest ceiling, and I think he will be the best player in this draft class. Jack's right. 6'8", 220-pound guard. You don't come across that every day. I agree with you. He needs to put a little bit of weight on, but who out of college doesn't need to put weight on? Going into the NBA. So he'll definitely get on a diet plan, get on a weight training plan for sure. I'm not worried about that type of stuff. But the type of stuff that Cunningham has that other players don't is what Jack said. His ability to score at 3 levels. He can score inside. He can shot create. He can create for others. He can hit shots from 3. And the biggest thing for me is his individual ability to take over basketball games. He can be a guy where he'll start 2 for 10 and have 5 points at halftime, as Jack said, and then come out in the second half and give you 20 and hit 5 or 6 shots in a row. His ability to explode, his dynamic ability to take over games is what makes him different than every other prospect in this draft. Yes, his defense. I mean, again, who out of college in the lottery doesn't have great, or who in the lottery coming out of college has great defense,
I can
right?
tell
It
you.
seems like I feel like every player coming out of college isn't a great defender, maybe except Mikal Bridges, right? But Cunningham
Wow, that's
has it.
exactly who I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
Cade Cunningham has it all on the offensive end, and he can create for others. He can be a floor general, and he can score. Like with the best of them. I mean, like a Jason Tatum is kind of like a
Wow.
comparison I think of, just with his size and his ability to shot create at 3 levels. So Jack's right. He's the best player in this draft, and the Pistons are lucky they got the first pick.
Here's the thing. It's funny Trevor said he can score at 3 levels because I actually I don't really agree with that. Here's the thing. There's some sort of misconception that Cade Cunningham can just fight through a ton of contact and get to the rim like at will. The guy struggles through contact inside the 3-point line. He shot, I think, 46% inside the 3-point line. That's pretty bad for a 6'8" wing/guard in college.
That's really not bad.
That's
not bad at all.
I mean, he shot 43. I don't think that's very good. I mean, Scotty Barnes was better. Like, Scotty Barnes is a bad shooter, and he was still better inside the arc. I'm just saying he wasn't good at fighting through contact. Here's the thing. Let me say this. Cade Cunningham's a great player. He's going to be a really good player in the NBA. I think he's a top 3 player in this draft. I just think that Jalen Green and Evan Mobley are better players coming out of college, and I think they have less holes in their game. I think Cade Cunningham's jump shot is his biggest strength. He's a great jump shooter. He can hit the 3. He can hit it off the dribble, pretty much anywhere on the floor, contested or open, anything like that. He can hit the mid-range well. But I worry about a few things. Like I said, fighting through contact. I worry about his turnovers. He had a negative assist to turnover ratio. He had more turnovers every game than he did assists. He only had, I think, over 5 assists as the point guard twice. He had 4 turnovers, 3.5 assists. It worries me because he didn't make great passes. He made pretty easy passes for the most part, and he didn't pass that much. And he's also not a great defender, as you said. Look, a lot of guys aren't great defenders coming out of college. I get it. That's not what I'm going to harp on. I worry about the turnovers and the lack of assists as a point guard. I think that he can easily be the best player in this draft because his jump shot will be able to carry him. I think he could be, like Tatum isn't a bad comparison. He'll take shots like Tatum late in games, those step back threes, and he'll make them. I don't think he has the inside game that Tatum does, or did even coming out of college. So I think Jalen Green, a guy who's a 6'6" scoring shooting guard, who can hit shots anywhere on the floor, I think he has a much more polished offensive game. than Cade Cunningham. So I think he can be better than Cunningham. I think he will be better than Cunningham. And then I think Evan Mobley also, not a lot of guys are really good defenders coming out of college, but I think Mobley might be one of them. 3 blocks a game, elite defender. He can guard the 1 through 5. I mean, he can guard point guards. I mean, granted, this is college, but I mean, he can guard anyone on the floor, which is fantastic. And he has the most assists per game of any one and done center in NBA history. I think that's worth noting because, he's one of those sort of unicorn guys like with that sort of potential, not to say that he can become Anthony Davis or Nikola Jokic or something like that, but big guys don't often have that passing ability. And I think Evan Mobley will have that. So, I think Cunningham will be a top 3 player. I just don't know if he'll be better than those two. And I don't think he will be. I think both of them will be better than him. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know if you have anything to add on that. It's fine if you don't.
No. I'll definitely go. I love Jalen Green as well. I love his explosiveness and his athleticism. He needs to improve his shot a little bit, particularly behind the arc. 36% isn't bad, but it's not great for a so-called scoring guard. Evan Mobley, I haven't watched him closely enough, but he did have a fantastic college season at USC. Mm-hmm. The guy's a stick. He needs to not weigh as much as me. What is he? He weighs 215 pounds. That is absurd. I weigh 215 pounds, and he has 8 inches on me. So he needs to put some weight on. But again, that's not going to be an issue. He'll get with a pro trainer, a pro dietitian, whatever. That doesn't concern me. I just think we harp. I think we get caught up a little bit in college stats a little too much. I just feel like when Cade Cunningham comes to an opponent's gym, all the attention's on him. So we can talk about his lower field goal percentage, but every college coach that coached against and game planned against Cade Cunningham designed their defense to stop Cade Cunningham. So I think we need to remember that when we want to get picky about, he only shot 46% from 2-point range, which isn't great, but is still pretty viable. And he was a 40% 3-point shooter, which is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for me, if we're going to get nitpicky on Cade, we can find holes in his game, but overall his potential as a prospect is the best in this draft class. And the fact that he's 6'8" and can handle the ball like he can, I agree with you, Ryan. His turnovers are a concern. 4 turnovers a game is a lot, but I do think he'll get that under control in the NBA. And for me, you talk about he has more holes than these other guys. I think Cade has the least amount of holes in his game. I think he's very polished as a prospect for only being 19 years old.
All right. Jack, I don't know if you have anything you want to talk about with this, but
I just wanted to switch the topic of this from Cade Cunningham to looking at those top 4 guys.
Okay.
I want to give you my ranking of those top 4 guys in order of who I would draft through 4th. Because I think it's a little I don't know if you guys necessarily agree with it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Obviously, number 1, I've said Cade Cunningham. Sure. I think 6'8", point guard, has all the potential, great scorer. Guy I would take second in this draft.
No way.
Is not Jalen Green. It is not Evan Mobley.
Yeah, okay.
The guy that I would take second in this draft is
Jonathan
Jalen Suggs. It's Jalen Suggs. I think Jalen Suggs, if you look at him, look at his year at Gonzaga, he was a freshman and he led that team. He was the leader of that team, the best player on that team far and away. And you don't see that often from a freshman player on that Gonzaga team. He has an NBA body. He's 6'4", 205. Mm-hmm. He has the ability to score, the ability to pass, and the ability to defend. And watching that March Madness run, he stepped up most when his team needed it. Mm-hmm. He was the guy that they turned to, and he was able to put that on his shoulders and carry the load for that Gonzaga team. That doesn't mean that I don't think Jalen Green or Evan Mobley have more potential than him. I'm not necessarily saying that. If you were looking at straight potential, just looking at their bodies, Jalen Green has to grow into his body a little bit and has uncanny athleticism, as well as Evan Mobley, who both of them have to put on weight, kind of get into their bodies. But I think, honestly, right now, I think Jalen Suggs is the best player out of those 3 currently. I think he knows his game well. And I think if you can put him on a team that knows how to build around him, I think he will have the best career out of those 3 guys.
Wow.
third, I would go Jalen Green because, like I said,
Wow.
he could be
It's
anything.
possible.
Ryan's in his feels right now, but keep going.
Right.
Hey, I like Jalen Green.
But so Jalen Green's a fantastic player. I watched him when he played in Hoop Hall here at Arizona, at Chaparral High School, when he went against Nico Mannion and Pinnacle. He has unlimited potential. He's just got to grow into his body. I don't necessarily know if he's ready for the NBA game yet. And I think he's a scorer. Like, the thing that I like more about Jalen Suggs than Jalen Green is Suggs will get his guys involved more than Jalen Green would, in my opinion. So that's kind of more of what I think out of those two, why I'd give Suggs the edge, in addition to his body and knowing his game. And then the reason I put Mobley fourth is just because it's a guards league. Guards win you games down the stretch.
I mean,
So for that reason, I'm not as high on Mobley. I still think he's going to be a great player. But out of those rankings, out of the guards that are in this draft, comparing them to Mobley, I would take every one of those guards over Mobley right now.
here's the thing. I want to say that, look, this could be just randomly this year, but I do want to say that, the top three guys in MVP voting, arguably, none of them were guards. Maybe, and again, this is a unique year, but
None
all
of them
three
won. None of them won.
I mean, sure, but I'm just saying. I mean, well, Giannis also wasn't a guard. He wasn't in the MVP voting, but
He has guard-like abilities, though, Giannis.
I mean, okay.
His ball handling and his movement are guard-like. He's just 7 feet when he does it. That's hard to argue against, right,
I mean,
Jack?
he
Jack,
doesn't-
I feel like that's pretty accurate.
I mean, his handle isn't like anything crazy. I mean,
It's pretty
not.
damn good. I mean, it's pretty darn good for a 7-footer.
I mean, yes, obviously.
Outside
for 7-footer.
outside of him and Kevin Durant, they have those two guys at
Yeah.
their size of the best handle in the league. I mean,
Look.
they have. That's a side argument, but
Yeah, I know. I don't want to get off track. And look, I think, Jack, it's interesting that you brought this up because, Suggs is a guy that I think is really, really good. And I didn't bring him up before, but it's good that you brought him up because I think he's a really good point guard, right? Yeah, for a team that I think is a little further along than the Houston Rockets. I think that he would fit perfectly in a place like Toronto, especially if Kyle Lowry leaves. I think he would go really well on a team that's a little further along with more talent. He's a good defender. He's actually a really good defender, I believe. He's a good passer, good leader as well, like you said. I just think that if you're drafting a guy like Jalen Green, you're drafting a guy, you're looking for that superstar. Like, he has that superstar, like, sky's the limit potential, where he could be potentially like a top 10, 15 scorer in the NBA one day. Like, that's the kind of guy you're trying to draft. I don't know if Suggs quite has that ceiling that Green has. That's why I think the Rockets will go.
No, I mean,
yeah,
you make a fair point. And like I said, I do think if every player had the best career that they possibly could, I think Suggs would be second behind Green out of those three. I still think he'd be ahead of Mobley, just absolute potential wise, like situation wise. My other thing too with that is, are you going to pair Jalen Green with Kevin Porter Jr. there? I feel like you already have a scorer who, Kevin Porter put up 50 points a game this year. He doesn't do.
and
a ton
they
of
have
other stuff
Wall
well,
too, don't they?
yeah, but I mean,
but
Wall.
At least for the first couple of years.
I would
guess,
say,
but-
I agree with you, Jack. But the problem, I think the reason they wouldn't care is because like Porter has like a bunch of like off the court stuff. Like, not even if it's necessarily like legal stuff, but like, he's just he acts out a lot. So like if you're Houston, I don't know if you want to just like rest your whole like, potential
Right,
franchise
but-
cornerstone on Porter. Like, you're
But
right.
what I'm saying is, you need a guy that does more than just score. Jalen Suggs isn't going to be the guy that turns that team around. He needs pieces around him.
Yeah.
I do think he would really fit well in Toronto. I don't see Kyle
Mhm.
Lowry coming back. I don't think they have the money
Yeah.
to pay. And I think if he's there at 4, that'd be a perfect fit for them.
Mhm.
I just think if I was an NBA GM, regardless of what my team looks like, I think Jalen Suggs is the second best player in this draft right now.
Wow. So if he was there at 2, you'd take him.
If
Best
he was
player
there at
available.
2, I would take him over both Green and Mobley.
Very interesting. Yeah. Sorry, Trevor. Do you want to say something or?
That's
We're just
interesting.
kinda- yeah.
Jack makes a lot of good points on Suggs, I will say. He is very mature for his age, and he's very mature in his body and his size. For me, it's hard because I think a lot of people have a little recency bias with Suggs, and he had a great college season, but everyone's going to remember that half-court shot he made against UCLA. And what we're going to forget is he played on a team where everybody in that starting five is probably going to play in the NBA. At least two or three of those other guys will get drafted to the NBA. I think Corey Kispert's a projected first-round pick. Ayayi has a lot of NBA potential. Drew Timme, I don't know if he'll get drafted, but he also might play in the NBA one day. So I feel like that Gonzaga team was just fantastic from top to bottom. There's a reason why they went undefeated up until they played Baylor. I think Suggs's ceiling and star potential is lower than Jalen Green. And I don't know about Evan Mobley, because Evan Mobley might have a lot of star potential, but I was just thinking about this the last couple of minutes just in my head. Big guys in high-end, like top 5 centers in NBA drafts tend to bust harder than guards. I look back to a lot of the recent busts in the last 10 or 15 years, like super notable busts. And I look back to guys like Greg Oden, Anthony Bennett, a little bit earlier than that, Kwame Brown, right?
Thabit.
Oh my God.
Hasheem Thabit, exactly. I just think centers, it's a guards league, as Jack said, and centers tend to bust harder than guards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, look, here's the thing. Here's the thing about Mobley is he would be a number 1 pick in almost any other year. You know, again, like this draft is really, really good. You know, Jalen Green and Cunningham, I think, will be drafted above him, but in most years, Mobley will be a number 1 pick. So I think a lot of these guys have number 1 pick potential. And I do want to say one more thing about Jalen Green before we talk about a different topic or move on. But Green played in the G League, right, for a year. And I think that people aren't giving him enough credit for that. You know, I know Jack mentioned that he doesn't think he's NBA ready. I would actually say he might, you know, be more NBA ready than almost every player in this draft because he played in the G League. I mean, he's playing against guys who played in the NBA. They're either longtime veterans or guys who are, even if they're permanent G Leaguers, I mean, these guys are, you know, on average, much better than most college players that these guys are playing against. So he's playing against, on average, like better talent and better players, you know, in the last season that he played. So I think that's worth noting. You know, I think Green, you know, it's an interesting path. Him and Kuminga both did that, I think, went to the G League this year or this past season. And I think it'll be a more common path as the years come, you know, go by. But I think he's actually, like, you know, I wouldn't say necessarily, you know, more NBA ready, but I think he's, you know, he's played against higher competition, higher levels of competition than these other guys. So I think that's worth noting.
Yeah, I just meant body-wise. There's
Sure, yeah, grow into it.
But I have a question for you guys, actually.
Sure.
Out of this draft, I'm going to kind of put you guys on the spot. Who of the guys out of the top, say 5, 6, 7, 8?
Yeah.
Who out of those guys do you think will be the biggest upside pick in the draft? And then who do we think is the guy that teams should stay away from in this draft?
Trevor, you
Ryan, you want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, this guy's pick 7, but I was going to talk about Davion Mitchell from Baylor. I really like him, but he's pick 7, so I won't use him as my guy that I really like outside the top few picks.
I wouldn't consider him a top player in the draft. So
yeah, I wouldn't either. Yeah.
Okay, well then I was going to say him or Cam Thomas, but I will talk about Davion Mitchell. I just think Davion Mitchell is the perfect NBA guard. He reminds me of Drew Holiday actually a lot. You know, he's a very good playmaker, averaged 5.5 assists per game in college. He's a 45% three-point shooter. At least from his last season, he shot 45% from 3.
Wow.
And, you know, I was joking literally 10 minutes ago about how no one in the lottery plays defense. This guy is a tenacious on-ball physical defender. And you saw when Baylor just absolutely dominated Gonzaga in the national championship, they did it with on-ball pressure. Davion Mitchell was the leader of that. And I think he is a fantastic, fantastic prospect. And a little bit slept on just because he played 3 years in college, right? He's not the big one-and-done names like Cunningham and Mobley and others, but I really like Davion Mitchell. A guy I would avoid, bro, I have no idea. I don't know the back half of this draft that well, I will admit. I haven't done my homework on this yet.
I can go. I can go ahead if you want, Trevor. I have
Go
some-
ahead, Ryan.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, here's the thing. Yeah, you can think about it for a second.
Whoever
if you
the
want.
Lakers draft, they should stay away from because I hate the Lakers. But go ahead.
For me, it's tough saying who I think you should stay away from. If I had to go someone, I think I'd go with probably Jalen Johnson from Duke. It's not that I don't think the talent's there. I think he has a lot of talent. I think he's a guy he's a small forward. He's a good shooter. He has potential to play decent defense. He's pretty long. It's just what worries me is like just off the court problems, and I think he had a lot of issues with Duke and that whole organization this past year. I think he was benched twice mid-game. He was benched against Illinois. He had a lot of problems. He was in and out of the starting lineup. And when you're a lottery talent, high-end lottery talent, even not like upper echelon, but second tier arguably, and you're getting shuffled in and out of the Duke starting lineup, it's not because of your talent. It's because of problems you have off the floor. And that just worries me a little bit. So, if he goes to a place like San Antonio, a place like Golden State, that would be a great place for him. But for a young rebuilding team like the Magic or Cleveland won't draft him, but someone like Cleveland, Sacramento even, like I wouldn't want him to go there because I think he would be a potential big bust. Someone with just seemingly some I don't know if it's motivational. I don't know if it's just being argumentative, having issues with just that particular staff at Duke. But I just heard a lot of things about that, and that just concerns me a little bit. And then somebody I think can be really good is actually a guy that not a lot of people know about even, and he's from Turkey. It's Alperen Sengun, and I believe he's an 18, actually. He's only 18 or 19 years of age. He's really young, and he played in Turkey internationally. And I think I've heard a lot of good things about him. He won Turkish League MVP at 19 years of age, which no matter, what league you're playing in, to win league MVP like that in an entire country is kind of unbelievable. And he's a power forward / center. He's pretty thin, like Evan Mobley. And I know I'm talking a lot about big guys, but he has a lot of potential. He didn't shoot the 3-ball well, but his 3-point shot looks pretty nice and it has a lot of potential. He can get to the rim at will. Great at fighting through contact. Can go through the pick and roll or just one-on-one post moves. He's fantastic at. And he has good defensive potential as well. So I really like him. A lot of these guys are projects. I think he's going to actually be less of a project than most international players. I think he could jump right in and surprise a lot of people this year. And so I think he's a guy to keep an eye on because he's going to slide to late lottery because he's, not really on people's top of the radar. But he could easily be a top 5 or 6 player in this draft, in my opinion. I think he has a lot of potential, especially on the offensive end. I think he has potential to do it all on the offensive end. So he's someone I want to keep an eye on.
Throwback centers, man. I don't love them in today's NBA.
No,
But Eden, go ahead.
Gotta agree. I'm gonna pick a guy that I watched last year a lot in college for the guy that I like. I'm gonna go with James Bouknight.
Oh, James Bouknight. Wrong.
I'm gonna go with James Bouknight. He played at UConn, obviously another Big East school along with Villanova. But yeah, this kid is a bucket, man. He's a little thin. He's 6'5", 190. Like I said, there are a lot of guys in this draft who got to kind of bulk up a little bit. But he has the potential to just score the ball from anywhere. His three-point shooting was a little bit down this year. I've heard a lot of good things about his three-point shooting in the pre-draft process, how that's improving. But at the same time, I think you give him a couple years in the NBA, give him some time to develop, he could really be a top-notch scorer in this league. 18 points a game, 6 rebounds a game. He's kind of a combo guard. He's not necessarily one, but he may have to play a little bit of one at least in the NBA. But he would be a great 2 guard. And I think he's someone who could come in and contribute off the bench pretty immediately for even a lottery team. But I think any team really in the NBA, he could come in and be that 7th, 8th man off the bench. And able to go ahead and score and put some buckets on guys. The one guy that I am going to stay away from in this draft went to Michigan, and he has an older brother that plays in the NBA.
What?
Franz Wagner.
Oh, he's pretty good.
I'm not a fan of this kid. I think he's strictly a 3-point shooter. I remember the talk on his brother was he's a big who can shoot, who can stretch the floor. who can do all these things. He kind of didn't turn
Mhm.
out very well. I don't know if that may be affecting my decision making a little bit too, but I'm just not a huge fan of this kid. I don't necessarily see him being a lottery pick guy. If he falls into the 20s, a lot of the stuff's about value.
Sure.
If he falls into the 20s, then I think that's a valid spot to take him, but I would not take him top 14. I probably wouldn't consider him until around that 20 spot, to be honest.
Wow. Yeah, because
Interesting.
I've heard him pretty high up there, like in even late
Yeah,
late lottery spots.
he's looking late lottery right now.
Yeah.
I just think that's too high for a kid and too much of a risk.
Oh,
The other guy too, Corey Kispert,
right.
I think
Yes.
is a big value pick. If he's looking at back half of the top 10, I think that's a little early for him. If he's falling end of the lottery, just outside the lottery, I think that'd be a great spot.
I love him.
Kispert reminds me of a Kyle Korver type player. I think he's just going to be one of those. I think he's going to be, or JJ Redick, just one of those guys that you run a play for where he can be a catch and shoot bucket from three just because he's a 45% 3-point shooter. And yeah, that's very effective in the modern day NBA for sure. I want to highlight one more guy, and I'm biased here because I want my Suns. If he happens to fall to my Suns, I want my Suns, especially since Cameron Payne might be on the chopping block for next season, which breaks my heart because I love what Cameron Payne did this year. But Ayo Dosunmu, who has the best name in this draft and is a really darn good player as well, averaged 20 points a game, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. He improved his shooting greatly. He's a 39% 3-point shooter as of last year. He's 6'5", he's big, and he's an experienced college player. So he's had time to mature and develop his game. And it's a very James Jones pick, right? I look at who James Jones took in 2019, Cam Johnson, a guy who played 4 or 5 years in college, had a chance to develop his game. He's not an 18 or 19-year-old kid. He's 22 or 23, so he's mature. And Ayo Dosunmu makes a lot of sense for my Suns, especially if Cameron Payne doesn't return. So that's a guy I like. One guy I don't like, I was actually going to say Sengun. I just don't like centers. And I don't like traditional centers, right, where they play back to the basket. Well, DeAndre Ayton is young, and we've seen DeAndre Ayton do things that typical centers don't do, right? He can hit mid-range jump shots and other stuff. But for me, Sengun, and he can definitely develop his game. He's only 18. I don't love the idea of a back to the basket center. The way that the game is officiated doesn't favor centers. The way that the game is designed nowadays doesn't favor centers. So for me, as Jack already said, it's a guard-oriented league. And unless your center can spot up and score at all 3 levels, I just feel like there's limitations on their potential.
Yeah, I mean, look, we can move on after this. I know we've talked about this for a while, but I mean, look, I'm not saying Sengun has a lot of potential because of what he's doing right now. I'm saying Sengun has a lot of potential for what he can do in 5 years. I think he becomes, potentially a top 5 or 6 player in this draft if he can develop that jump shot, that 3-point shot. And he had a really bad percentage, in his season at Turkey, but it's there. There were a few times where like he made some nice contested threes, and his jump shot looks pretty nice. So I think he has a long way. You're right. I mean, he has a long way to go, but I think that potentially he could be a center who could score at all 3 levels. That's why I mentioned him. But you're right. If he struggles to score at all 3 levels, he will not be the guy who I think he can be.
One last quick question for you guys, and we can make this quick.
Sure.
What's one realistic option for your team, Trevor and I, the Suns, Ryan, the Cavs, that you would like in this draft?
Oh, in this draft? You want me to tell you who I want? Oh, Trevor knows who I want. I know
who Ryan wants.
The unicorn, Evan Mobley. I'm telling you, I think this guy fits really well with our team. And look, I'd love Jalen Green as well, but here's the reality. If we get Jalen Green, we have to get rid of Colin Sexton. It's just the way it has to be. Sexton's not going to take bench money he might take bench minutes because he's a team player. I don't think he'll take bench money. I've heard that Sexton's agent has actually been the one leaking these trade rumors. Like the Cavs aren't actively shopping him. They want to re-sign him. But his agent is trying to, and rightfully so, it's his job, trying to get him the most money he can, with his contract looming this year, contract extension, and then free agency next year. So I think if we get Green, we'll have to get rid of him. And I'd rather not. I'd rather try to stick with as much talent as possible. And I think getting Mobley does that. And I think Mobley can be a superstar. So I've said at length why I like him, but I think Mobley's the guy we get at 3. And then, if we were to trade up and get another guy late in the lottery or in the middle of the first round, that'd be fantastic too, because this is a deep draft. And, there are a lot of good guys, but I want Mobley.
Jack, I want Dosunmu. I would be good with Miles McBride, another kind of defensive 3-point shooting guard from West Virginia. And Miles McBride looks a lot like Kelly Oubre, which I think is always a good thing to have on your team. I miss Kelly Oubre dearly, so I think Miles McBride would also be another decent option. But for me, I like the idea of the Suns going for a guard who has played multiple years in college. I think that's a perfect pick for us, a guard that can help us out from day one, not as much of a project pick, especially since we have a 36-year-old guard and a really good backup who we might not be able to pay. So I think the idea of drafting a guard that isn't as much of a project, but is more of a guy who has developed his game and has spent multiple years in college or overseas or wherever he might be developing his game, I think is a good pick for the Suns. I don't know about you.
I completely agree with you, and that's why I'm going to give you this name right now. Chris Duarte out of
Interesting.
Oregon.
Oh,
That's the guy that I want. If he's on the board, I would pick him.
He's flying up the boards.
Right. 17 points a game,
Yeah.
40% three-point shooter this season. He's been in college for, I think, 4 years now. He's a scorer. I think he would fit perfectly on our bench and could give Booker some time off. As soon as he came out, we'd still have scoring with Chris Duarte coming in. I think it's a very James Jones pick. That's the guy that I would want, ideally. I don't know if he'll be there, but if he's there, I would jump on that and move on.
Yeah, that'd be a great pick, I think. But we'll see. We'll be able to talk about this next week because the draft is Thursday, and the NBA landscape will have shifted. The Cleveland Cavaliers will have all the potential in the world to make the playoffs. I'm excited because we probably won't make it, but you never know. Maybe we'll finally get a guy that's not LeBron that can be a star. But we'll see what happens. It'll be an interesting draft, and it'll be an interesting week. But before I know we've talked a lot about the NBA, but before we wrap it up, I wanted to bring up free agency real quick, because free agency is right around the corner as well. I don't remember if this is the tampering period or like official free agency, but I believe it opens around August 2nd, I think.
Tampering period.
Yeah, where everyone can sign everyone anyway. Like just agreeing to stuff. But it's around the corner in a week, I think, around there. And it's going to be an interesting free agency class. The Suns have a lot of guys either extension ready or free agents. So that'll be interesting. And a lot of other teams have as well. And I wanted to ask you guys, just name a player that you think will be, it could be for the Suns or for any team in general, but name a player in this free agent class that you're interested to see where he lands, or like a good landing spot for him, or a guy, you just want to keep an eye on this free agent class.
Go ahead, Jack.
To be honest, I haven't thought about this that much. I've been so caught up in our run to the finals.
Of course.
But as a hometown Suns fan, I'm interested to see what happens with Cameron Payne. I think he was a big part of our team. He was our sixth man this year. And it's going to be interesting to see, A, how much money he gets, and B, if he decides to come back, how much money he's willing to leave on the table. This is a guy who, was out of the NBA. Hasn't made a ton of money. We signed him for a very small amount going into the bubble, and picked up his team option. And this is his best chance at finding generational wealth. So I'm just curious to see, A, is a team going to pay him somewhere in the $10 million, maybe a little bit more range? B, is a team going to give him a starting point guard spot? And C, is that stuff that he would want and take over coming back to Phoenix, maybe for a little less money, maybe to come back on the bench? So he's a guy I'll keep my eye on for sure.
Trevor, do you want to go ahead?
I do. I have a hunch that Cameron Payne is going to be a Phoenix Sun next year. It's just a gut feeling, but I have no evidence to back that up.
I'd love
One
that.
guy I am really keeping an eye on this free agency period, and this is a guy we probably can't even afford, but I think if we sign this player, we become the odds-on favorites to win the Western Conference next year. It's Kawhi Leonard. I'm just kidding. It's actually Serge Ibaka.
Yeah, okay.
He signed a 2-year deal with the Los Angeles Clippers, and that was a year ago, but this second year is a player option. So if he declines that player option, he will become a free agent. And we talked about a lot at length off the air, on the air. Us three have talked about it a lot. The Suns needed a backup center. And we saw when Dario went down how badly we needed another rebounder out on the court. And Serge Ibaka is more than a rebounder. He's an experienced veteran who's won a ring. He's expanded his offensive game, but most importantly, he's a rim protector and he's a rebounder. And he's just such a perfect fit for my Phoenix Suns. He might be too good to be a backup. But I just think if we got this guy, I'm being serious when I say this. I think the Suns win the West next year if we get this guy. I just think he would be that important.
That big of a difference maker.
He would be a huge difference maker just because I saw how close we were, literally with one capable center on the team, how close we were to winning a title. Now we add in a guy who has experience, he's won a ring, and he's effective on both ends of the floor. I just feel like he is the perfect player for my Phoenix Suns. But if we do sign him, we're going to be paying a hefty luxury tax, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting because the Suns are going to have to work some magic here in the next few years with Chris Paul, Cameron Payne, if you sign anyone in free agency, and then Ayton and Bridges have their extensions coming up. And then Cam Johnson is going to be extension eligible, I think, starting next offseason. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, we're going
to – I really don't think they'll be able to keep everyone, as Jack said earlier in the podcast. But, that's just the reality, an NBA Finals team has to face. You're not going to be able to pay everyone all the time. And if you do, you have to be willing to pay a luxury tax. So we'll see where that goes. For me, a guy I wanted to look at is actually a little different, and that's Spencer Dinwiddie, because I think he's made – I don't know if he's made it super clear, but I believe he made it pretty clear he's probably going to leave Brooklyn and go elsewhere for some more money. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see where he goes. I think there's opportunity if the Philadelphia 76ers were to trade Ben Simmons for Dinwiddie to go there. I think that would be really interesting because obviously they need a point guard. Not that Simmons is all that good outside of passing as a point guard, but I think that Dinwiddie would fit really well with that team. I think that would be really interesting. I think he's going to get good money this year, even off a torn ACL. I want to say, he's going to get probably at least $15 million a year. So it'll be really interesting to see where he goes. I'm sure he'll be attached to teams like the Lakers, like all these decent and, good players are for some reason. Like the Lakers can actually trade or afford to pay anyone, which they can't. But, I think it'll be interesting to see where Dinwiddie goes because I think he'll probably go to a contending team, maybe Miami if they let go of Goran Dragic. I don't know, but some team like that, I think it'll be interesting to see where he ends up, especially off a torn ACL. If someone can get him at a discount.
One other guy I want to highlight, he's not a free agent, but he certainly will have an impact on this offseason, is Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal has recently requested a trade from the Washington Wizards, and if he goes anywhere near Los Angeles, I'm a riot. That's all I'm going to say. Keep Bradley Beal in the Eastern Conference. Philadelphia is, again, a perfect fit. Philadelphia is in a really unique situation because they honestly might have the best tradable asset I've ever seen. Ben Simmons' potential is off the charts, but his bust potential is also off the charts. And it's just such an interesting asset to have because it's going to go so violently one way or the other. He's either going to turn into a perennial all-star or he's going to turn into nothing. So for me, that's going to be really interesting, but I would shop Ben Simmons and Matisse Thybulle or Ben Simmons in a pick for Bradley Beal. I just think bringing in a third scorer like that for Philadelphia and another outside shooter would benefit them a ton. Another interesting place for me Bradley Beal could go, and a team that has disposable young assets, is New Orleans. I think the Pelicans keeping Zion and Brandon Ingram and then bringing in a Bradley Beal would make that team really interesting. Also piss me off because another good team in the West. But yeah, those are two places I really think Bradley Beal could flourish and could help out two franchises.
Jack, I don't know if you have any thoughts on where Bradley Beal can go, but
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I feel like he's requested a trade for 2 years now, and then he says he hasn't, and then they look to move him and they don't. I don't know. But I do think getting away from the free agents, my next point about how interesting this offseason is going to be is because of guys like Bradley Beal and then specifically other guys, Ben Simmons. What does Philly do to blow up and change that situation and try to win? Then go out to Portland. What does Portland do with either Dame Lillard or CJ McCollum?
Yeah.
I think either of those guys could get moved. They obviously won't move Dame unless he asks for it. But I think, CJ McCollum may be out the door. And one of my friends who is a big Philly fan was saying that Philly should trade Ben Simmons for CJ McCollum. That'd be an interesting move. But I'm just curious to see what movement outside of free agency, what trades are made that change the landscape of the NBA this offseason.
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of interesting trades, and Trevor and I have mentioned Damian Lillard. I think that I think he's going to end up staying. I don't know. I mean, unless he's really biding his time, like he really hasn't said anything about wanting to get traded, or unless he's kept it really, really private. Like, so I don't know. Everything he's said publicly is like he wants to stay with the Blazers, or like not even that he wants to. He expects to suit up for Portland starting next year. Blah blah blah. So that'll be interesting. And I also sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh no, I was just gonna say one team to watch out for with any non-free agency but trade
The
moves.
Lakers.
No, is another team in California. Actually, it's the Golden State Warriors.
That's what I
Watch
said.
out for them. They have picks 7 and 14. They have a movable contract in Andrew Wiggins. They have guys like Weissman if those guys need to be included. Jordan Poole is another great asset. They definitely have the assets to make a move for a Ben Simmons or a Bradley Beal or a Dame Lillard if he's available.
A Colin Sexton, if they want to.
Who knows?
In all seriousness, like if Sexton would go anywhere, like Golden State would be a great spot for him.
I thought he didn't want to be a backup.
By the way, quick question. What are your thoughts on the potential Buddy Hield for Kyle Kuzma news?
They're a joke, and they're lying. They're actually lying. If they think the Sacramento Kings didn't laugh the Lakers out of that phone call, then
I completely agree.
Kyle Kuzma's worth nearly nothing. He's a bad basketball player. And who wants Kentavious Caldwell-Pope if you're not contending for a championship? He's good on a championship level team. He's not good on the Sacramento Kings.
You know what I would trade Kyle Kuzma for? A silver-plated Kiddish cup. That's all I would give up for Kyle Kuzma. He is worth absolutely nothing. This is a larger issue, Ryan. Ryan, I'm glad you brought this up because I was going to hammer this here at the end of the podcast.
Yeah.
Why does everyone in the national sports media think the Los Angeles Lakers are going to sign? Is Michael Jordan going to go back in time and become prime MJ and come out of retirement and sign with the Lakers? I mean, I'm hearing all these things. Oh, the Lakers are going to get Chris Paul. They're going to trade for DeMar DeRozan and Russell Westbrook. Damian Lillard's well on his way to LA. I'm like, what free agent hasn't been linked with LA by now? Or what tradable player hasn't been linked with the Lakers by now? I get it. LeBron is a GM. He is a recruiter.
That's your answer.
Please, if I hear one more damn player linked with the Los Angeles Lakers based on literally nothing except for the fact that Lakers fans
want them,
are butthurt about getting beat by my Phoenix Suns and need a new team to beat my Suns. It's just so annoying. I'm sick of it. And Ryan's right. If Sacramento really thought about trading Buddy Hield for Kyle Kuzma straight up, I don't know what they're thinking. And poor De'Aaron Fox because he's stuck there. But I just feel like there's absolutely no way they didn't laugh the Lakers out of that phone call. Ryan, you were 100% right about that.
I totally agree. And I'll let Jack say something if he wants to. But seriously, like the only reason national media is talking about all these players going to LA is because LeBron wishes it so. It's not that like his agency is just like trying to drum up all of these players getting attached to the Lakers in hopes that these teams will actually be interested in trading them to the Lakers. There's no one who's genuinely looking at this. Adrian Wojnarowski said the other day, every single team in the NBA has been offered Kyle Kuzma and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. He said every single front office has been called about them. He said one combination of KCP or Kyle Kuzma, one or the other or both. He said every team has been called about them and no one wants them for the price that the Lakers are asking for. So, if that's not telling, I don't know what is. So, I agree, Trevor. I mean, I just think they need to stop talking about all these players going to LA, but they won't. They'll keep talking about it for the next 2 weeks because they really want it to happen.
Eden?
Good. I hope they stay there.
Yeah, I mean,
Me too.
Look, I think a lot of these guys could be traded, but they won't be traded to the Lakers. You know, I don't see it. And if they do,
The
like,
Lakers are going to get somebody. All right. I think they're going to get. I'm not saying they're going to get Buddy Hield for Kyle Kuzma, but I do think they're going to get. They're going to get. I don't think they'll get an A-level free agent. I don't think they're going to get like a Damian Lillard. Or I don't think they'll get like a Russell Westbrook. But I could see them getting a couple B-level players. I don't know, a Kelly Oubre. I mean, they could get Buddy Hield for the right price. I could definitely see that happening, just not for Kyle Kuzma straight up. I have a hard time believing that was the actual trade. But I do think the Lakers are going to have a couple new pieces on that team that are worth talking about. But no, this idea that they're going to have another super team where they get Lillard, DeRozan, prime Michael Jordan,
Kyle Lowry.
prime Larry Bird, Kyle Lowry, Kevin Durant, he's going to pull another Kevin Durant and go to it's just ridiculous. I can't stand it.
Yep. No, I 100% agree. But, I do think some of these guys get moved, just not to the Lakers. So it'll be an interesting offseason, interesting next few weeks. And we'll definitely have a lot to talk about with this offseason. But, I don't know if anyone has anything else to add. I don't know if Trevor.
I have a ton to add, actually. I have a lot of shout outs to give out today.
Yeah, go ahead. I knew you were going to say you had some shout outs, so go right ahead.
Shout out 18-year-old Tunisian swimmer Ahmed Hafnawi for
Wow.
winning the 400-meter freestyle. He was so I don't know if you guys know how Olympic swimming works, but there are 8 lanes, and the closest 2 lanes in the middle are the guys who have had the best qualifying time. So lanes 4 and 5 have the best qualifying times.
Okay.
This guy was in lane 8, so he barely even made the final. He was, I think he was 3/100ths or 3/10 of a second away from not even being in the race. That's how close it was.
Wow.
He takes gold in an unbelievable race, came up the end on the last 50 meters and stole it. I want to give another shout out to just the entire Olympics in general. I watched the opening ceremony on Friday night. I thought it was outstanding. A big question was, what kind of spirits are the athletes going to be in? No fans, a lot of COVID issues. And the athletes seemed like they were having the time of their lives. It seemed like they were having a great time. I don't know if you guys saw at the opening ceremony, they had 1,800 drones up above the Japan Olympic Stadium form into a planet Earth. They formed the shape of like a 3D planet Earth and had all the continents like mapped out with 1,800 like program drones. I thought that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my entire life.
Wow.
And shout out USA men's basketball
Yes.
for losing again. The US is arrogant in a lot of ways, and sometimes it's rightfully so. We have
And
the
they
right
flop.
to be arrogant, but yeah, then you flop every once in a while and you come back to earth. So that was fun to see. Evan Fournier, speaking of prime Michael Jordan, looked like prime Michael Jordan today. So shout out Evan Fournier. Shout out USA basketball. And guys, I have one last question for you. Where do you think Kevin Durant signs next year? Nigeria, Australia, or France? Where does he go?
It's got to be
Phoenix.
France. Phoenix. Wow. If only.
Phoenix.
If only. Oh man. Yeah. Maybe Kevin Durant goes somewhere else. He seems to change teams every other year. Trevor, I appreciate the shout outs. Jack, I appreciate you being on this podcast again. It was great having you.
Thank you. I love it. Bring me back next time.
It was a great NBA discussion. And I think, Trevor, I don't want to speak for you, but we'll probably be talking still about the NBA for the next handful of podcasts here because we have the draft.
We got football. We promise.
free
We got
agency.
football coming
And
up.
we do have football coming up. And, we got college football coming up as well. We'll have more there to talk about as well. And yeah, it'll be an interesting next few weeks and next few months with football coming up in full swing. It's going to be a lot of fun. I know my Cleveland Browns are going to be very good. I'm excited. Shout out to Chandler Jones for requesting a trade from the overrated Arizona Cardinals. I'm glad he decided that they weren't worth sticking with. So, that was interesting. But
as you guys know, I'm a gambler. I'm a betting man. Chandler Jones is going to suit up with the Cardinals next year, 100%. I don't see him playing for anyone else. This is his way of trying to get more money, and he deserves more money. Steve Keim needs to pay up, but Chandler Jones is not leaving the Arizona Cardinals this year.
Well,
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, we'll see what happens. You might be right. I don't know enough about it. I guess we'll see, but yeah, we'll be, I think this about wraps up this podcast. And we'll be back next week talking about a recap of the draft and a preview of free agency looming right around the corner, plus some NFL stuff, with training camp, I think, starting this week. So it'll be fun stuff. It'll be interesting. So until next week, and we'll see you all soon.
Kyler Murray for MVP.